How do we know? Are they giving us the wrong answers? Or are we not asking the right questions?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me on The Right Questions. Our first interview today is going to be Jim Oberweis. I'm really excited to have him on. Got a lot of great things to talk about. As usual, the ticker is going to be at the bottom. I'm really excited. We're slowly but surely getting to our Philadelphia goal. I'm really hoping that we get to go out there and meet those officers and get to show them our support. So that's the one on the bottom. So I'm going to bring Jim in, and here we go. Hello, Jim.
Good
Thank you
afternoon.
for joining us. So I'm really excited to do your interview because you're kind of transitioning a little bit with this run. Right now, you are the 25th District or Illinois Senator. So
Right.
You're in Springfield, and now you're transitioning to the House for U.S. in the 14th District.
Correct.
Okay, so tell us why you're making that transition to run.
Well, first of all, it's a little bit of a surprise to me. I believe very strongly in term limits. This is my 8th and final year in Springfield. When people ask me to run for the state Senate seat, I thought, that probably makes some sense because my background, many people don't know it, but I actually spent most of my career working in the financial services industry, starting an asset management firm and a family of mutual funds, and built it from zero to over $1 billion under management. I understand liabilities, I understand assets, and I understand those very large future pension liabilities that we have. And I thought that perhaps my experience could help us to work on that problem. That was the intention I had going down 8 years ago. What I found out in Springfield was they don't want people who understand pension liabilities. They don't want people to understand what kind of a situation they had gotten our state into. They just wanted people to go along with whatever they told them to do. And I don't fit very well in that category, I'll tell you right now. I did my best trying to straighten them out, but when you're a Republican in the Illinois Senate and you're outnumbered 2-1, it's difficult to get things to happen that will control spending. I very quickly learned to try to work across the aisle and make friends on the Democrat side, and I was able to get the speed limit on Illinois roads, interstates, increased from 65 to 70, something that 4 senators before me had tried to do and all failed. And I did it by working across the aisle and getting several Democrats to sign on as sponsors on the bill. I tried to do that with some other legislation. We were successful with some, but when it comes to solving the pension, very difficult to do because their key constituencies tend to be the state workers and their unions and state teachers unions. And those are the people who do not want any changes in our pension system. If we're ever going to get out of debt in Illinois, we have an obligation to pay our retirees the level of benefits that they've been promised. But I think if we're ever going to get out of this debt, we're going to have to renegotiate the COLAs. Right now, there's a 3% compound annual COLA. Private sector doesn't have those any longer. We've gotten away from that a long time ago. In fact, the private sector has pretty much gotten away from fixed benefit pensions, and it's gone to defined contribution pensions, such as 401k plans. That's really what we need to do with Illinois. I personally declined a pension because I didn't think it was right, and somehow we've got to get an adjustment in that COLA. If we do that, there's a chance that we could eventually work our way out of this debt. Without doing that, I don't see how it's even possible.
I appreciate your honesty with that because a lot of people, they want to shy away from talking about those pensions for exactly the reason that you
Right.
stated. You know what I mean? People want them, especially the people that have been promised them for so long, which is completely understandable.
We're entitled to them. We do have to defend that and make sure that they get those pensions. And I believe strongly in that. It's the COLA that is a concern. Anyway, to finish my story, this is my 8th year. I believe strongly in term limits. So my intention was, okay, this is my 8th year. It's time for somebody else to try. And I thought this winter I'd probably be spending a little more time playing some golf in Florida with my wife. But Lauren Underwood does not represent our district. She is way too extreme. She has voted 100% of the time, not 98%, not 99%, 100% of the time with Nancy Pelosi on every issue, every bill, every vote. she's representing Nancy Pelosi. She's not representing our congressional district. So I'm doing everything I can to replace her. I'm cautiously optimistic that that's what's going to happen next week. So we're looking forward to seeing that come. Although I will tell you, she has a whole lot more money than we do. They've made major buys on both cable and broadcast TV. In fact, Nancy Pelosi's super PAC, the House Majority Fund, just came in for another $560,000 buy for this last week of the campaign. So it's
yeah, it's a lot. And I have to applaud you again, because you have in both of your runs, the Senate has been predominantly Democrat in Illinois. Well, actually both sides. But you're also in this transition, you're going after the more Democratic leaning of the two houses of Congress, which I applaud. Now, one of the things that people don't understand, or maybe they just don't know, I shouldn't say understand, maybe just don't know, is that when you go into Congress, you get assignments. You have assignments that you get. Now, the ones that are being held currently by Lauren, let me make sure I wrote them down because I didn't want to forget. So right now she has, let's see, Education, Labor, Homeland Security, and Veterans Affairs. Now, would you be inheriting those assignments, or do they adjust?
No, they're assigned depending on background, experience, and what works at that particular time. My background, I think I mentioned, really has been primarily in financial services, running a mutual fund and asset management business. So I would hope that I would be assigned to the Financial Services Committee. Also, I have some background in agriculture, and there's a reasonable chance that perhaps I could be assigned to the Agricultural Committee. Another one that makes a lot of sense probably is the Small Business Committee. I'm a small business guy as well.
You were also a teacher, were you not?
Yes. How did you know? You've done some research, haven't you? I actually, when I graduated from the University of Illinois, the first job I had was as a teacher. It was really, it was almost an accident, because I was planning on going to law school and working for my father, my family business, Oberweis Dairy, and they asked me to deliver a sealed milk bid to the Oswego School District for the upcoming fall. So I did, and I, once in a while I have a tendency to joke a little bit. So I walked in and said, "Hi, I'm a teacher looking for a job." But you probably don't know it. Back in those days, they were desperate for teachers. That's why it was kind of a joke. And the principal came running out of the back office. Come back here! I want to talk to you. What? And pretty soon he was talking me into taking a job rather than going to law school. And I was married. My wife was going to have a baby, and I thought, maybe I should take this job and give it a try. So I did, and I taught math and science at the junior high level for a year. It was a great experience for me. I hope it was an equally good experience for the kids, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
And that's okay, but it seems like you did it. From the research that I'd done, you were successful for the short period of time that you did do it. And I feel like that gives you a more well-rounded idealism of what we need as constituents. So I can appreciate that you've done so many different things. Also, you're a philanthropist. You've worked with other nonprofit organizations. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. About 25 years ago, I recognized the importance of giving back and of helping others. And I set up the Oberweis Foundation. And it has kind of two general avenues, if you want to call it that. One is helping people who are really in need. The biggest recipients so far from that sector has probably been Hesed House here in Aurora, which is a shelter for homeless. Project Hood in Chicago, which is run by a very good friend of mine, Pastor Corey Brooks, who is this guy. I'm telling you, I can't say enough nice things about him. You started off with a Ronald Reagan quote at the very beginning of this. Let me give you another Ronald Reagan quote. And it's something to the effect of, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. And that is Pastor Corey Brooks. He grew up in Indiana, and decided to move to the toughest neighborhood in Chicago, which is the Woodlawn and Englewood area. His church is at 6620 South Martin Luther King Drive. And across the street from his church, there was a motel that had become a center for drugs and prostitution. after putting up with that for a while, he finally, in December, about roughly 8 years ago, climbed up on the roof of that motel and said, "I'm staying here until people donated enough money to tear this thing down." He was up on that roof for 94 days in December, January, February, and into March in Chicago area winter.
That's rough.
Not even coming down to go to the bathroom. That was quite a tribute, but he got it done, and they've torn it down. It's now a vacant lot on which he's hoping to build a community center with two goals. One is to help get kids off the streets, to bring kids from different areas of the neighborhoods together, so that they don't get involved in a gang, and they see that, okay, guys from this other side of the street are okay people too, by playing basketball with them or whatever the case may be. So that's part of it. And then the second part of it is adult job training, particularly in three areas. In the area of hospitality, and in that area we have given him the right to an Oberweis ice cream store, a Vet burger joint, and a wood grain pizza, which are our three concepts, but also in construction and in lawn care. So in those three areas, they're trying to teach men and women in their community those skills that they can go out and get good, well-paid jobs. Now, here's a African-American pastor on the south side of Chicago who has a principle of government can help. Government can provide a safety net for those who are really having trouble, but you can't live off the government for your whole life. You've got to get those skills. You got to get out there, and you got to take care of yourself and earn your own way. And to me, those are Republican principles at their heart. And whether he knows it or not, he's got those Republican principles, and he was courageous enough to endorse myself 6 years ago when I ran for the U.S. Senate against Dick Durbin. And at the time, he also endorsed our Republican gubernatorial candidate. And as a black African-American, as a black pastor in Chicago, you aren't allowed to endorse Republicans. It's not acceptable. And he started getting death threats. His wife and children literally had to go into hiding for the last couple of weeks of that campaign. And they broke into his church, stole about $8,000, made death threats on the phone. He actually was able to record some of those and gave them to the Chicago police, who probably weren't successful in prosecuting anybody as a result. But this guy he will do anything. When all this rioting and looting started, I'm watching on TV and I see what's going on North Michigan Avenue, and they're throwing Molotov cocktails. They're breaking in, stealing everything they can from jewelry stores, clothing stores, and everything. I thought, well, at least they're not in Corey Brooks's neighborhood. So I called him just to talk about it. He said, absolutely. So they broke into every grocery store and every pharmacy in their entire community. So all those stores are closed, and people have no way to get fresh food and to get their prescriptions filled. So this guy organized, he was successful in getting some companies to donate literally truckloads full of chicken and vegetables and fruits. And he got me to drive an Oberweis Dairy milk truck in and stand there for 3.5 hours handing out quarts of our milk to people in need. And I thought it was such a great idea. And that's an example I'm talking about. He doesn't do it for anything for himself, for any publicity. He does it to help people. And I thought it was such a great idea. I brought it back to the 14th Congressional District and organized, in conjunction with some of the food pantries in our area, to do similar events. But at his event, they helped about 4,000 families that first time. At our events, and we've done about a dozen of them, we helped anywhere from 100 to 400 at each of those events. So his events was obviously much larger, much bigger. And he's done a couple more since then. The most recent was about 2 weeks ago. And again, I drove another milk truck in with 2,000 bottles of our milk, which we handed out and gave to people. And they're very, very appreciative. And he provides other things too, like books for parents to read to their kids. And I mean, I just love this guy. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. He's a terrific, terrific human being.
It seems like you both have what I would say just common sense solutions to problems that are arising in not so common sense formats. And I use that word because you call yourself a common sense conservative. And I'd like you to tell me what that means. What does that mean your platform stands on?
Well, it means figuring out ways that we can help people who are in need without bankrupting the future of our children and our grandchildren. My opponent in this race, her answer to everything is just, the government can give you more money. And I have to say that I'm astounded in this pandemic that we were able to give $3 trillion to people and businesses in need without it causing a sharp increase in interest rates and without it causing rapid inflation. Now, I also have an MBA from the University of Chicago. That training tells me there is a price to pay. We're going to pay this, that the debt can't be allowed to keep on rising as it has. But I haven't totally figured out exactly how that price is going to be paid. My gut is that there is going to be a higher rate of inflation, which will devalue the currency, devalue the buying power of the dollar at some point. But maybe it's a year or 2 years from now. I don't know. But I'm concerned that will come.
I think that there's a lot of concern from many different people. We just don't know, like you said, how is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And what are our options with it really? Because at some point, everybody's got to pay the piper. But when it comes to that, now we have a whole new discussion of taxes that's coming our way. Now, Pritzker has talked about the progressive tax, the fair tax, which
we call that the Madigan-Pritzker tax increase.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's really agreeable to that. Now, I'm interested to see what your concept is on it. But before you answer that question, I also want to know how you feel about Lori Lightfoot basically telling, the federal government, you must give me $1.2 billion because I'm, terrible at my job, or I'm going to fire 615 officers from a force that already has been depleted. So can you kind of touch on those two different things for me?
Sure. Look, I think this constitutional amendment is a terrible idea because, on the surface, Pritzker and Madigan are arguing, well, it's only going to be an increase on these top 3%, and it's going to be a big increase on those, but maybe some will leave the state, maybe some of them won't, we'll see, but it's only those top 3%. The problem with that is once you change that constitution to allow for these various tax rates, the top 3% are not possibly going to be able to feed the hunger of Springfield legislature for more and more and more spending, so that they're then going to have to, and they will be able to target a certain group and just increase rates for that group. So the next thing they'll do is maybe hit the next 10% after the top 3% and have a tax increase for them. But that won't be enough either. So then they'll have to take the next 10% and the next 10% and the next 10% until we're all paying much higher taxes. But they were able to do it without the same political backlash that they would have under the current system, because under the current system, if they increase rates for one, they have to increase rates for all. That's not even quite true, because what they could do is to perhaps increase the rate, but also increase the exemption amount. I meant to look it up, but I haven't. The first X amount of earnings, I don't know what's $20,000, let's say, is at zero rates, and then everything above that is at 4.95%. Well, you could accomplish some increase in the amount or percentage that higher income earners pay by increasing that exemption to, instead of 20,000, make it 40,000, for example, and then increase the rate from 4.9 to 5.9, or there are ways to do it like that without changing the Constitution and without giving the politicians free rein to start taxing retirement income and other income in various degrees. So I'm absolutely opposed to it. If you believe and you trust the legislature in Springfield to never increase the rates except for those top 3%, then you probably want to vote for it. I don't trust the legislature, and I've been there, and I think most of us in Illinois have learned that would be a foolish mistake to trust them. So for that reason, I'm strongly opposed to it. There was a part B to your question. City of Chicago. Look, the state of Illinois is in the same situation. the state of Illinois, again, I'm a common sense business guy. Normally, we'd be serving in the legislature in January, February, March, April, and May, and then take the summer off. Well, this year, there was no session in February, March, and April because of the virus. And in May, we were only there for 4 days, and we're there primarily to pass a budget for the current fiscal year that started July 1. Well, as a business guy, I'm thinking to myself, let's see, we know revenues are going to be down in the new fiscal year. We better cut spending and look at where we can tighten our belts and not let our budget get out of whack. Because unlike the federal government, which can print unlimited amounts of money, the state government cannot. It can borrow up to a limit until people don't want to loan it money anymore. So in Illinois,
well, we're almost at junk status, so that really doesn't help either. So
I'm sorry?
We're almost at junk status, so that's not going to help
Exactly.
us for too long either.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. That begins to put the limit on what the state can borrow. So anyway, when we get to Springfield, is the state thinking about where they can save money and how they can cut? I'm thinking a worst case basis, we're just going to cross the board, freeze revenues, and
that includes for the legislators, right?
it should.
And more hikes for them.
It should, but instead, no. We voted for a $2 billion increase in spending, in spite of the fact that we're estimating that there would be a $4 billion decrease in revenue, creating a $6 billion gap between revenue and income. And as you were subtly hinting at there, they also passed and allowed in the budget an increase in salaries for legislators, which to me is absolutely crazy. We're extremely high paid already. We make $75,000 or $80,000, plus those who take the benefits have incredible benefits in medical care and pensions, same kind of pensions that the other state workers get, which shouldn't be, because this is supposed to be a part-time job, so there shouldn't be pensions at all for legislators.
And tax exemptions, right? Pretty sure you guys have some of the best tax exemptions that you get to, like the cars and the
Well, we get a budget for a district office. We get a legislative aid in Springfield. And by the way, let me just point out, traditionally, each senator gets his own legislative aid. I insisted that was not necessary. I insisted for my 8 years there that I share a legislative aid with one of the other senators, which saves about $40,000 a year right there. For our budget, for the state budget, we have a budget to cover, again, a district legislative aid and a district office. And I have shared my district office with State Representative Keith Wheeler, which is great for constituents in our district, because if they have a problem they want to talk about, they can come into one office, they can talk to Representative Wheeler and myself at the same time. So it makes sense for our constituents. Besides that, it saves significant dollars. And every year I've turned back to the state about $10,000 from my annual state budget. Virtually nobody else turns back money either. In fact, there's a little pressure on the legislators. If you've got money left over, take it in and get it in stamps, and then we'll do a mailing for you in the next fiscal year. But don't let it go back. I let it go back. I think it's the right thing to do for taxpayers.
We appreciate that. Now, would you also be?
Oh, let me just quickly finish up. So to fill that $6 billion gap, the state has borrowed $5 billion from the federal government and gone further behind on another $1 billion in deficit spending. The governor thinks that the federal government is going to, we borrowed the $5 billion from the federal government, and the governor thinks the federal government is going to forgive that additional $5 billion because of COVID. But our state Senate President Don Harmon went even further and asked the government to give us another $10 billion to go into our unfunded pension liabilities, which was absolutely audacious. In other words, we've misrun the state. We've overspent. So let's ask the taxpayers in Florida, Texas, Indiana, and Wisconsin to pay for our mistakes. That's not the way it should work.
No. And I'm sure Indiana wouldn't appreciate it either. So on that note, though, we're talking about, passing bills and reforming the tax. And these are all things that I'm so glad that you've been honest about, because there are a lot of things that tend to get skirted, you know what I mean? And people don't want to say the numbers out loud because they make people nervous. So I applaud you for your bravery in that respect. Now, when it comes to passing these kinds of legislations, if it were ever to get anywhere, which good luck of it happening, but let's just say the shooting star happened to fly to where we could see it, would you be agreeable to legislation that made it to where a bill that you were passing had to be 100 pages or less so that it was understandable and it couldn't be, the example I've given every time is the Save the Puppies, but inside the Save the Puppies Act, we're killing cats. So would you agree to that so that people could understand more of the language and know what they're agreeing to or what their legislators are agreeing to on their behalf?
I've sponsored a number of bills in Springfield. I believe the longest one was about 4 or 5 pages. I have not thought of legislation to put a limit on the number of pages, but probably makes some sense. But your point is that so much of this legislation gets rammed through without people understanding. Wasn't it Nancy Pelosi on some legislation a while back said, maybe it was Obamacare, you've got to pass it to read it or something to that effect, which was really galling. But unfortunately,
I think Biden gave another example of that too. I'll let you know about packing the courts after.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Adding Puerto Rico.
Exactly. I mean,
those kinds of things.
I am all about transparency, openness. Look, for me, I'm doing this to serve the people in my district. It's not because I need a job. It's not because I need an income. I will do this as long as I feel this is a service. And by the way, people have asked me, what's the first thing I would like to file as legislation? And I have said, I would love to file term limits legislation to limit legislators, because you know what? The founding fathers of this country believed that people serving in government were doing it as a service to their community and to the country, not as a job. And I will tell you, what I've seen is that those of us who consider this a temporary service to our community vote in ways that we believe are good for our country, good for our state, and good for our district. Those who view this as a job, as a profession, the so-called career politicians, they vote in ways that they think are good for their own reelection. And there is a huge difference in the legislation you get between those two differences.
You are the second person to admit that. You and Sargis Sangari are the only ones who would come out and say flat out, people will vote for things if they think it'll get them reelected, not what's right to do.
Absolutely. No question about it.
I appreciate that.
I've even had people come over. I've at least 5 or 6 times on the floor of the Illinois Senate, I have begged my colleagues to vote yes for a bill if they think it's a good bill and vote no on a bill if they think it's a bad bill. Because way too often, how people vote is determined by which party filed the legislation. I've had people, as I said, come over to me after the vote. And I said, why did you vote for that? You know that's a bad bill. And they said, yeah, well, I kind of felt like I had to because the party was pushing it. But don't worry, it won't pass in the House. Well, that is terrible reasoning, in my opinion.
So it sounds like we really need you there to change out that 232 to 197. It sounds like we need to balance that to a little bit. So I think that it will be wonderful to have someone with your ideals be able to bring that to Washington. And I do know that you've done or have at least tried very hard to do some of the good in Springfield that you could. So I definitely appreciate that. And while I was learning a little bit about you before we started this interview. So if there was anything that you could tell the voters in your district or the people of Illinois who, will be looking to you for the guidance, when you make it into the House, what would that be?
Well, again, I believe that my opponent is just way too extreme for this district. She represents Nancy Pelosi. She's voted, as I said earlier, with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time, no exceptions, not one. I will represent the people of this district, not Nancy Pelosi or anybody else. I will be an independent voice, and I will vote yes if I think it's a good bill, and I'll vote no if I think it's a bad bill. I'm doing it because I'm concerned about the future of our country and concerned about the future of our state. I'm not going to be right in everything I do, but I will do my best, and I'll be open and honest and tell you why I'm voting the way I'm voting on any particular legislation. I also will work very hard to listen to people in my district. I've been very, very lucky. My legislative aide is Maria Rook, and she has been great. People have come to our district office with concerns and interests about things I would never have dreamt going to a state senator or a state rep about. she digs in, she helps, she finds solutions, and she does all the work. And guess who gets the credit? I get the credit for all the great work she does. I mean, is that a deal or what? I'm hoping that as we go forward, that I, as a congressman, will have her or somebody equally good to help people solve their problems, to listen, and to take action that will help better the people in the 14th congressional district.
Well, Maria, you heard that. You got to stick around so you can keep helping. Well, thank you so much. This is Jim Oberweis. He's running for U.S. House. He is our current senator in the 25th. So you guys definitely go check him out. Do you have a page that people can go and find out more?
We do. Thanks very much. It's www.jim2020.com. Pretty simple. Jim2020.com. And there are two things you can do there right now. If you want to help us for the last few days of the campaign, you can make a donation any size. I will personally match any contributions coming into our campaign so that we can respond with an increase in our TV buy for those last few days. Secondly, every weekend I'm out knocking on doors, talking to people, and listening to their concerns and their problems. I can't get to every house, but we've got crews of volunteers going out from our St. Charles office, from our Yorkville office, from our Crystal Lake office, and from our Lake County office in Grays Lake. We would love to have you join me, knocking on some doors, talking to people about their needs, their concerns, and encouraging their vote. This whole election is going to be determined by who can turn out their voters. If we get the Republican voters out to vote, we're going to win not only this seat, but several others in the state. Wouldn't it be great if Illinois led the nation by taking 2 or 3 congressional seats back from the Democrats? What a great day that would be. Ashley, you're the best. Thanks for inviting me on here.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining us on The Right Questions. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks.